Well, hi and welcome to Practice Makes Parent, where we understand it's not about perfection, but about transformation. I'm Dr. Danny Huerta.
And I'm Rebecca St. James. Today's podcast is going to help a lot of people because it's about a very, very important and relevant topic. We're going to be talking about anxiety, specifically anxiety in children. And Danny, I feel like as parents, especially parenting kids in this day and age, that is a particularly anxious generation. I feel like it's hard to know sometimes with our kids, is this just a developmental stage? Is this just them kind of going through awareness of the world and things that can happen? Like we've had some tornadoes come through Tennessee and we had to kind of hide out in our pantry for a little bit. And I saw a bit of anxiousness in our middle child after that. Is it just these kind of things coming in, or is it their temperament that just tends to worry a little bit? That can be a little bit like me. I kind of was like that growing up. I think my parents said at one point, if you don't have something to worry about, you tend to find something to worry about. It was just, I tended to be that child.
You had to work through anxiety then. I mean, when
little
you
bit.
all of a sudden you're on stage.
Oh, I know.
At 16. That was a big deal,
Well, 13,
Rebecca.
my first
13.
tour.
Wow. So how'd you do that at the beginning?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I think it was just, I'm a pleaser by nature. I think I've always, my mom would say this about me, I've always sought to be conscientious.
Which is a great trait.
Thank you. But tried to be diligent in all the different things. And I so perfectionistic probably. And so I think it just played out that I would worry about things that I didn't need to worry about. And my dad was quite good actually at bedtime of just like talking me out of worries. But I think starting in music at 13, and I'm probably in my 40s now, just kind of unpacking, some of the story of my life in a way, and writing a book and having that come out too just recently.
Yeah.
I think writing that last year and having a movie come out about my family, I think it has been a time of reflection and even looking at, well, did starting in music young play into some of those worries and fears and anxieties that I've dealt with on and off in my life.
It's created resilience in you.
Thank you.
Wow, yeah.
I hope so.
So your dad, what did he tell you at 13 where he was next to you?
Yeah.
And saying that? I'm just curious, what words were fueling to you as you faced anxiety?
He would just ask questions. I think he was just really trying to get to the bottom of what I was thinking and feeling, and whether these were truly things to be worried about, or whether we could kind of talk them through and let go of them. And, that was like, it was prime kind of connection time, I feel like, that time right before bed, which it is with kids,
It is.
And then we would pray together too as a part of that nightly routine. So it really did soothe my fears. And I think my dad even talks about it today, him now in his 70s, that he's proud about the fact that he could kind of talk me through to the other side of my fears and help me feel release from them.
And families are so busy.
Yeah.
We've talked about that a lot here. It's just the reality of the pace of life, and trust is in question. Relationship is, I don't see relationships as strongly built right now. And we're talking about, like you said, an important topic, and statistics are showing that there's an ever-increasing number of kids struggling with anxiety, and just in society in general. One of the large studies recently showed that close to 1 out of every 2 boys was dealing with high levels of anxiety.
Wow.
In girls, it was up around 6 to 7 out of 10 girls were dealing with anxious, somewhere on the spectrum of anxiety feelings. Now, you go to diagnosable anxiety, and that drops down to 10 to 20% between boys and girls. But there is a tendency that girls tend to show more of the anxious feelings, and boys tend to show more of the anxious outlet behaviors.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is some of the boys will go towards their anxiousness and will do more dangerous things in their anxiety. So you'll see them take on more risks, because there is a frustration there. You don't want to acknowledge that you're anxious or fearful, and so you step towards it. And for boys, it's not that boys aren't anxious. They handle it differently, and you can't see it overtly on the outside. Okay. Whereas girls are more attuned to their feelings and will say, I'm anxious, or I'm fearful, or I'm afraid. And the norms within society allow more for a girl to express her anxiety than for a boy.
Okay.
A boy's just supposed to go after whatever's in front of them, and if they're anxious, they're weak.
Okay.
And so, there's a question, why do girls struggle more with anxiety than boys? And it's just different. And now it gets kind of foggy because of the substance abuse and the ways that kids tend to cope with anxiety, that then it muddles it up, because some kids get into pot use and other things, and it actually triggers an anxiety response over time for them. And now that's a whole new way that kids are experiencing anxiety. So this is a complex issue
very much
that we're stepping into. But the fact is that as parents, we need to know what is going on in our kids, and also what's happening inside of us. If we don't handle anxiety well, it's hard for kids to feel a sense of calmness. Like what your dad did with you, he was able to say, hey, honey, tell me more about this. He was present with you. He gave you a sense of grounding in the busyness and the chaos of it all. And now a lot of kids are trying to find the grounding with influencers or with other things in front of them and with peers, and they can be thrown off track pretty quickly. And so another piece to this for moms, I want to tell you, when you have a child in your womb, you naturally physiologically have more worries kick in, and men don't have that. That happens when a dad is spending more time with their kids, their testosterone starts to go down, and there are more worries that a man gets over time, the more time they spend with their kids. But for a woman, it's immediate. In the womb, they start to get this worry, what if I don't do that? And am I prepared? And all these worries come in, and it's a beautiful thing of protection from a mom, maternal instinct, that for me, when I'm thinking about society and how we're allowing or funding a place like Planned Parenthood, where it goes against the mom's natural instincts of protection of life inside, where we're wired to naturally have that worry. Somewhere along the line, moms have experienced this disconnection of this natural need and desire to protect life inside of them. But know that as a mom, if all of a sudden you're starting to feel this anxiousness as a mom with your first child or your first couple children, it's a normal response. And make sure you talk that through with your friends as you guys are thinking through all the what ifs there. And even though scriptures say, be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. Anxiety can be tough. And if we look at the verse following that, and that's verse 7 in Philippians 4, it says, and the peace of God, if you're anxious in everything, but in supplication, with thanksgiving, you let your requests be known to God, so you're going to God. It says, you will experience the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding. And this is the key piece, Rebecca. It will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. There's a guarding that's taking place. And with our kids, let's look at what that means. Maybe you can talk to your kids. What does it mean to guard our mind, and how does prayer do that? And it's all about this perception and belief that's being built day in, day out, and it requires conversation between us and our kids.
Absolutely. And remember that we have a counseling line at 1-800-A-FAMILY. If you'd like to talk with a licensed professional counselor about your situation, we just want to let you know that you have access to that. It's free, so helpful, just a wonderful place of help and hope for a lot of families. So just know that we have that. Also coming up in this episode, we'll hear from a dad who has made some mistakes and wants the forgiveness of his children, but he doesn't know if they'll trust him again. A really, really important question today.
That's a good one. And today's guest is a licensed professional counselor and a registered play therapist, Julie Lowe. She has been helping children and families for more than 2 decades. Let's jump into the conversation.
Julie, you and your husband, Greg, have 6 children, and you serve as foster and adoptive parents. Man, just those couple things alone, and I know there's a tremendous amount more, just so much respect for you. And I'm very fascinated just to hear from the top, like what what was the invitation on a God end even to this kind of work? What was it about your heart that just was like, I want to go that route in my ministry?
Yeah, it was probably very missional in posture. Just always had a heart for people. I grew up in a family of ministry, so it wasn't a huge leap to begin with. Um, I always had a heart for fostering and adoption, and so being a counselor and it
Yeah.
bleeding over into professional work made a lot of sense. So yeah, I love what I do, and we really invited ministry into our home as well as choosing to serve in professions that were ministry oriented.
And how old are your
So
kids?
great.
They're between the ages now 14 and 23.
All right.
So
Wow.
All right. So you've gone through
teens
lots
to
of
young
different
adults.
seasons. Yes. All right.
Yes, and the problems just keep getting bigger and more serious.
Oh, yeah.
It's very true. And speaking of that,
Yeah.
anxiety is a big issue right now, big topic with teens and young adults and even, young kids as well. What are some of the physical and psychological roots that you've seen on the professional side and maybe with your own kids as well?
Yeah, the physical, I mean, it's interesting because some people tend to be more biologically sensitive, reactive to emotions and anxiety, things like that. And, there's a whole argument about how much of that is rooted in brain chemistry, how much of that is genetics or hormones. And that's a good question. And as a counselor, I'm always wrestling to try to figure that out. But for sure, people are more biologically sensitive or even temperamentally sensitive. We kids don't come out of the womb as blank slates. They come out with personalities and strengths and weaknesses and dispositions and temperaments. And so that kind of bleeds into how much of that is temperamentally a struggle or a predisposition. And then you have experiences, people's situational things that happen, whether it's stressful experiences or trauma or attachment or cognitive issues or learned behavior from their own family. So you can see why it's really hard sometimes to make sense out of it because the roots of it can go in lots of different directions.
When you're saying sensitive, let's talk about that a little bit because that's an important word. Biologically and temperamentally sensitive. What does that mean? What does that look like in a child when you're saying they are sensitive in that sense?
Yeah, well, if you read some research, it's interesting that they say some people are biologically more sensitive to things. So, what might be an example? It could be hearing. People who have more acute hearing than other people whose vision is more acute or not, or you take kids who are sometimes on the spectrum who harsh things like a vacuum cleaner or loud noises affect them in ways wouldn't affect you and I have a son with a vision impairment who light and certain lighting affects him much more greatly than other people. And so it makes sense to say that people can feel stress more acutely. It tends to be more physical. They get stomach aches, they get headaches, where I might just find it stressful. Somebody else might feel it physiologically. That's one way of thinking about it. Just
Yeah,
that
the
people are more naturally.
sensitivity, the sensitivity to things that could stress them out or could cause an anxious feeling, and usually anxiety is I don't feel safe. I
Yeah.
feel something may harm me. And so with those young kids, you can begin to see that in their temperament, right? Extra cautious. They react more so to certain sounds, and their first inclination is I'm scared about this. And for kids with experiences, those adverse experiences in their life, what does that look like? How do you know there's an anxiousness that has begun in that child?
Anxiety can be about feeling out of control as well, right? Like I don't feel like I can control my world around me, and there's reality to that. We're not in
Yes.
control of a lot
Yeah.
of things. So the reality, the truthfulness of that, and so especially kids whose world, and as foster adoptive parents, we've experienced this, children whose worlds have been in shambles or uprooted or lack of stability, and life feels out of control, and how that can breed fear, worry, anxiety, or desire to try to somehow be in control of everything.
Yeah. Well, we can't talk our kids out of that too. Yeah, they feel like, oh, I'm not in control of this situation. Well, yeah, there's a lot in life that you can't control. So it's like, it's hard to kind of talk them down off of that. What do you think is happening in our culture that so many today are afflicted with anxiety? You read the stats about it, and it just seems unbelievably rampant. What do you think are the major factors?
Well, I think a lot of it is media, meaning our kids, you and I, were more sheltered from things to be afraid of growing up, except the things that were in our immediate world.
Yep.
Now children are exposed to every potential danger, every media event, things from trauma to war to political events to unrest to rioting. And that's things that growing up wouldn't even faze me because I'd be unaware of it. I'd
Yep.
be oblivious to it. And so I think with the entering of media everywhere or social media, kids have a lot more awareness of things that are worthy of being afraid of.
Yep.
And what do you think about just the belief system as well, the core beliefs of faith? How does that play into maybe the increase or decrease of anxiety? Have you seen in your practice, is there a difference if a child has a core belief in a Heavenly Father, especially when there are experiences that have created the anxiety rather than biological or temperamental anxiety?
I can answer that in a lot of different ways. I think, though, hope. Hope is,
Yeah.
there's somebody who is in control. So ultimately, the answer isn't, I teach you to be in control. The answer is, there is a God who is in control, who loves us. And even in the hard things, God doesn't promise there won't be hard things. As a matter of fact, He promises there
There
will
will
be.
be. Yeah.
And I think that's where parents and adults can go wrong. We try to make promises that we can't actually
Right.
make.
Yes.
Instead of saying the world is a scary place, there are hard things that happen, there is difficulty, there is suffering, but the God of all of that is watching over you, and He goes before you and with you and in you and beside you. And that's really our hope, or should be our hope.
Yeah, that's so great. What's the difference between, in anxiety, the difference between it from an adult perspective versus a child's perspective? Because you're getting that child's perspective so regularly. Can you help us understand what it's like for them?
Yeah, I think, well, one thing that stands out immediately is children often struggle to verbalize their anxiety, so it comes out in behavioral issues, while adults usually are more able to articulate their anxious thoughts and feelings. So you see, kids will act out behaviorally, and we can miss what's going on. It could be things like clinginess or avoidance, or younger children tantrums, or older children difficulty focusing, or it comes out physically as we talk to, or refusal to go to school. And so you're always wrestling with children and teens to understand what's normal development, what is normal
Yes.
worry and fear versus what crosses over the line of normal. Where again, adults tend to be able to articulate those things much more clearly.
How can we help, young children especially be drawn out? I know a lot of parents use the emotion wheel or some kind of emotion page of like having them point to the face of what they're feeling and things like that. Do you suggest any other kind of tips in helping our children really to feel like they're not alone? I've heard that definition of trauma. It's being alone without help, like I'm just alone in this and no one can help me. How do we reach them? Is it as simple as just asking questions, or is there other tips that you can give in that?
Well, I think there's winsomeness in asking good questions and drawing out people. But I also think it's just our presence. Like we incarnate Christ by loving somebody and being with them and demonstrating
Yeah,
you
it's
are
good.
not alone in this.
It's good.
I am with you. And that's really the call of a parent, a counselor, a loving adult to say, you don't have to go through this alone. And Christ embodies that
Yes.
by us as people to one another. And it's like the ministry of presence,
I love
call
that.
it,
Oh, I love
where
that.
we're called to minister by just being present with one another. We always think it's our
Words.
wise and persuasive words that win people over, when sometimes it's just the fact that I sat with you and loved you and you weren't in it alone that really brought somebody through a hard task.
Thank you. That's great.
And for some parents, it could be that the initial response is annoyance, right? If you don't understand the anxiousness, it can slow you down. You don't see it the way your child sees it. There's a self-protective element to anxiety that a parent may not relate to, that has not struggled with anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about what is a normal fear response, and why is that important for us to understand as parents? We have to have fear in order to survive this world. We need to have some level of respect for certain things that make sense we're fearful towards. And then when do we need to get some help, either for us in our parenting skills or for that child as they're learning how to manage this reality of having an extra sensitive lens that they're working with?
Mm-hmm. Well, you look at Scripture. Scripture says, who by worrying can add a single hour to your life? And so that's one end of the spectrum where worrying actually robs you of hours. It doesn't increase your hours, it robs you of hours. But the Bible also speaks to genuine danger and says that in Proverbs it says the prudent man or the wise man sees danger and runs from it. So God's not calling us to ignore things that are dangerous. But we're also called to live with discernment. And so the pendulum can swing to either side where we're in denial, we're unwise to the things that exist in this world and the evil that can befall us, or we worry about everything, which ends up crippling us. And so there's wisdom to say, how do we navigate the fact that we do live in a broken, fallen world, and there are things to be concerned about and afraid of, but also trust that we have a God who's sovereign over all those things. Your second question is just, when should I be concerned? When, as a parent, would I say we need more help? And I often think of three factors. One is frequency, like how often is my child struggling with this? Then I think of intensity, how intense, how long does it last? How overwhelmed and consumed are they? And then I think of duration, how long does it last? And so all those things are kind of measured by the degree to which it impedes our day-to-day functioning. Is my child or my teen or even myself, am I able to function day to day because these things are impeding upon life? And at that point is when you need to say, yeah, we need professional help. We need other help. We need additional help.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with getting that help. And you're a counselor. You're a counselor. You get to see kids in this place. Probably young kids. Do you see kids 5, 6, 7, 8 in your practice, Julie?
I do, and I try to work with families and parents because really I believe parents are their wise counselors at that point. And how do I equip them to help their children? My job is to work myself out of a job and to really equip parents to know how to love and engage their kids well. But yeah, children who are very young to children who are in high school and college and all the things there are to be anxious about.
And as that parent comes in with that child, what is your initial word of encouragement for them as they're seeing this long life ahead for this child, and they're already struggling with a tremendous amount of anxiety that's impeding with their functioning? What's a word of encouragement you begin with them?
Well, I love Galatians 6 that, you don't go really weary in doing good, that in due season we see the fruit of the efforts and the love that we put into people. No labor of love is in vain. All of our children have struggles. They're different struggles. They struggle in a different way. And God's a God of redeeming our struggles. And so painting a picture of that is a great place to start, while also saying, but we have to be wise in how you do that.
Yeah.
For children, what are some life events that can trigger anxiety? I mean, I can think of a few, like moving or change in big changes within the family, but what are some of the big ones that we can kind of look for that trigger anxiety?
So circumstantial events are things like we serve as foster parents, so you can imagine just the disruption of home or
Yeah.
things going on in home, divorce, abuse, addiction, major things like that. And it can be consistent moving. It can be something like a fire or a tragedy or the loss of a family member. So we tend to think of the major life events like that, or just initial change. Um, all those things are things that throw us for a loop
Yeah.
that can instill anxiety in us.
Okay.
And well, let's talk about the just peer-to-peer type of anxiety, the social anxiety that many teens are struggling with. What are some life events that begin to trigger that insecurity and that anxiety socially for today's youth?
Yeah, some would argue social media, not some, all will argue social media does that, right? Um, some would argue there's developmental stages will do that, hitting middle school, or I think it's hitting younger now, fifth grade, sixth grade. But social media for sure is a major issue that kids are struggling with. And all the research demonstrates, especially with girls, that if they're on social media, they will be more anxious, more depressed. They will be comparing themselves. They'll struggle more with body image. Yeah, all the signs are there that it just wreaks havoc on young girls.
And I've noticed around the age of 8, 9, 10 is when that negativity side of the brain starts to kick in, where you realize that other people can have thoughts about you, and many times there can be negative thoughts because they're talking about each other, and you're getting into that those later elementary years and into the middle school years. And so there's this beginning of a crisis on the negativity side to begin the perception of whatever's about to happen from a negative side. And then you have now the news and social media for many kids hitting around 10, 11, 12. And so there's a lot of momentum there that begins to create this anxiousness that I don't think I'm safe. Things are not going to go the way that I had planned on them going. I may be rejected. I might not be liked. What are some good things that parents can begin to do at 7, 8, 9 years old from that standpoint to help a child reset their brain as it's doing this natural progression towards negativity and critical thinking?
Well, it makes sense developmentally too. If you think about kids are early on, they're going from just observing the world around them to realizing it's observing me. So it's a developmental being more aware, self-aware of the world around you and relationships. So it's in those stages. One, as a parent, I want to be really protective. What am I allowing my children to absorb? What are the messages they're seeing around them? Am I keeping them off of social media that is going to tend to define their value and their worth? And then as Christian parents, we know where worth and value really should be found. So we should be instilling that deeply in them. And we should be preparing them that there is a godless world system that wants to redefine what brings value and worth. And God has something to say about that. And the more we instill that deeply in our kids, the more we're giving them the skills and the tools to fight against a godless world system.
Piggybacking off of that, can you talk for a minute on just how we as parents can comfort them and encourage them to turn towards God? Because really, as they grow older and then eventually leave our home, that's going to be and needs to be their main support system for their whole life long. So how do we, in practical ways, just teach them to turn to God and rather than just comforting them ourselves, which I think is our instinct, but they just need to learn how to go to God. Do you have some practical insights on that?
Yeah, well, you think about it for a minute. I mean, hopefully any loving parent wants to comfort their child who's afraid of a thunderstorm or feeling rejected by peers. And how do we tend to comfort them? We say things that really don't help, like, well, I love you. Don't worry what they think about you. I love you. I care about you. Like what 13-year-old thinks, well, my
Right.
mom loves me, so that takes away all the rejection of
It's
my
all
peer
good now.
group.
It's only
Yeah.
dad's
Right,
love,
it's all
really.
good if my mom and dad love me. Though we are incarnating comfort, right? But ultimately, my comfort can't stop with me, or I'm just replacing one person's feelings and opinion of me with another person. But if I point them back to the Lord and say, you know what, God can go places inside your head and heart that I can't go.
That's a good
He's
way to
there
say it.
with you. Yeah, he feels your rejection. He knows your loss. And parental comfort should always point to God's comfort. So you have Corinthians that says we comfort others with the comfort we've been given, which means
Yes.
it's incarnational. That ultimately all my comfort, all my love as a parent needs to embody and point them back to Christ, or I'm failing my children and I'm just teaching them to look to human beings for their source of comfort.
And also modeling that in our
Yeah,
Yeah.
own
Yes.
definitely.
anxiety or nervousness or worry, being able to show and model that we take some deep breaths and say, "Hey, Lord, help me right
Yeah.
here." Or do we go have a posture of going on our knees and
Mm-hmm.
wanting and asking for God's help during times where we feel afraid? Because as adults, we feel that. Sometimes our kids don't get to see that because we do it in the quietness of our bedrooms. It would be good to include, especially the older kids, in some of that conversation, saying, I'm concerned about this, or I'm worried about this, or I'm afraid about this, and I'm praying about it. Can you guys be praying?" And then you're doing things to take care of that. One thing I used with my kids, and I've used in my practice, is the words, "Is there another way to look at this?" Because
Mm.
there's always a new and different way to
Yep.
look at the thing you're looking at. And when you get a new angle, you may get a new and different understanding of what's there. A perfect example is a shadow. You look at it from one side, it may look scary. From another side, it may look completely different and not scary. And so helping kids understand that there's, even in peer relationships, asking the question, is there another way to understand this or to look at this? It gives you a new question to explore and say, oh, well, maybe that child was mean to me because something is happening in their life. It's not personal to me. They're not
Mm.
being mean because they don't love me or they don't like me or they're rejecting me. It's because they have their own issues and I just happen to be in the way. And it's
Yeah.
spilling in towards me. I think what's fascinating, Julie, is what's happening physiologically in the brain of a child that's anxious. I compare it to a traffic jam in Denver, where everything just jams up and all the blood flow is overriding any type of rational thinking, and they're just the person is stuck. They can't shift out of that. And sometimes bringing a lightheartedness, some humor, a different
Mm.
fact can potentially give them an exit point on that highway. Have you seen that in your experience with anxiety, that sometimes bringing something of the unexpected can help them at least take an exit, maybe sit in a restaurant along the highway instead of getting
Yeah.
stuck in the traffic jam for a little while?
Yeah, I use that analogy a lot of a highway, but I also say you can't teach a child to swim when they're drowning, right? When they're in the
Right.
midst of a moment, you want to get them to stability and to be rational and calm, and then you can address what's going on. What are the belief systems? What are the
Yes.
struggles? What are the things driving them? But in the midst of real panic and fear, we're called to incarnate comfort
Yes.
and
And to
to model
validate.
that. Right.
Validate it, right, Julie? I mean, that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. Being present, not minimizing it, but being right there
Right.
with them, even maybe holding them or taking a walk with
Mm-hmm.
them and
Yeah.
allowing for them to experience that and to talk it through.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's the skill to, or just even parents knowing their kids well to say, will they be helped by distraction? Will they be helped by a walk? Will they be helped by just comfort and just holding
Hmm.
them and saying, I'm with you. And so knowing the needs of your child and what will be beneficial to them is really important.
Mm.
My daughter and I have painted together
Neat.
sometimes just to put things on hold and to be able to escape life for a moment and to connect in that creativity. You're saying something super important, and that is know who your child is, know their personality, and what would help them manage the anxiety that's in front of them. Are there certain personalities that are or temperaments that are more prone to anxiety, and which ones are they?
Well, it's interesting because there's some research out there that talks about it and says, kids who, or people, this is you and I too, who are more responsible, perfectionistic, who have difficulty relaxing. They like to please, they avoid conflict, they prefer structure, and they're not very assertive. How that combination tends to create anxiety. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because you think of somebody who's not really assertive and avoids conflict, yet is perfectionistic and wants things done right. That inner turmoil of, I want to tell you what you're doing is wrong, or I want to do the right thing, or I want to do this perfect, but I'm not pushy enough or aggressive enough to ask for it. And so you can see how certain temperamental traits, sometimes I teach on this, and I'll read off those temperamental traits, and I'll ask anybody in the room identify with this, and more than 80% of the people raise their hands.
Wow.
And you can say, yeah, well, you can see why that would create anxiety.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. You know, we were studying a little bit before this interview and reading just about foods and nutrient-rich foods, how they can help support mental health as well as the body, and sleep, that more than a third of all American adults and more than 2/3 of teens don't get enough sleep. How that can factor in, how exercise, like just as little as 5 minutes of aerobic exercise each day or a 10-minute walk will reduce anxiety. Like these are things that as a busy mom are just going, oh, wow, I could actually, I could do that. Like, I think sometimes I look at making huge changes, like, you know, an hour or two of exercise a day or whatever. Absolutely not. Like, this is just literally not possible in my life right now. But, you know, 5 to 10 minutes walk to kind of reduce anxiousness in my life or stress, like I can do that. Or water, that the adult human body is made up of 60% water. Our blood 92%, and even mild dehydration will affect our moods. You know, these are kind of things that are just so helpful to be aware of. What are practical changes that we can make that can help change our family life? Maybe change us, change patterns within the family that are like just simple lifestyle changes. Do you have suggestions on that end?
There's so many good things parents can do, like just having normal rhythms, having family meals together,
Yes.
having, putting cell phones and technology out of bedrooms so kids don't have interrupted sleep. I mean, again, research just demonstrates how the blue light and the constant dinging, and there's so many ways that it keeps kids, prevents them from even just normal sleep patterns and healthy nutrition. One of the metaphors I give is just we live in a fast food lifestyle,
Yeah.
meaning that we eat 3 square meals, but is there anything really nourishing happening in that moment when you're eating
Interesting.
fast food? It's enough to sustain you, but is anything nourishing happening? And I think relationally, socially, lifestyle, families are growing up with that mentality that
Yeah.
we're racing around from thing to thing. We're getting our kids to school. We're getting homework done. We're getting them to their practices or their violin or drama practice or tennis. We getting them home. We're making dinner. We're getting homework done, and then we fall in bed and we feel like we've accomplished what we need to. But is there really any meaningful discipleship or relational interaction happening in marriages or family life today? And sustenance does not equal nourishment.
Yeah, the nourishment of relationship takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes carving out some time to do that and creating that space. The sleep cycle is really important. Let's talk to that when it comes to anxiety. How does that impact a teen when they're staying up late into the night, they're on the phone, and then in the morning going to school and they have sports and all kinds of other demands on them? What happens over time to the brain and to the anxious thoughts that can come up for a teen?
You can answer that on the physical level. You can answer that on the emotional level. Just think, when you lack sleep, you don't think as clearly over time. You're thinking more slowly. You're reacting more slowly. You're probably reacting more emotionally. And so how much of that is physical? How much of that is brain activity? How much of that is, I don't have any clarity, so I'm just becoming more emotional? I mean, it all blends together. That's the irony of how God has wired us, that we're also embodied souls. We're physical beings who respond to the lack of sleep or food or any of those things, physical activity that you've mentioned.
Because then if a child doesn't, or if a teen doesn't get enough sleep, then diet goes off. There's usually sugar foods that they go
Yeah.
after when you're tired, or
Easy
carbohydrates,
fixes.
the things that'll make you feel good in the moment. And then there's the caffeine. And I really do think there's a caffeine crisis. There isn't as much conversation on this, but some teens consuming or kids consuming six
Yes.
Monsters in a
Red
day
Bulls.
or Red Bulls,
Ah,
which are super
yeah.
damaging. When you look at the ingredients of that, it is
Yeah.
awful for the body.
Wow.
And I know, at least in my practice, Julie, I've seen that some kids struggle with panic attacks over time when they've consumed, they haven't slept enough, they're eating the
Mm-hmm.
wrong foods, and then they're consuming a large amount of caffeine. It sets the
Yeah.
perfect storm for a panic attack. Uh,
Yeah.
let's say a parent is in that scenario. What's the beginning to reversing that and to creating a solution, a first step towards health in that scenario?
Yeah, well, depending on the age of the child, right? Every parent wants to handle things differently, but it's my job as a parent to intervene when I see my kids going off the rails in any direction. But I also want to be wise in when am I trying to convince them to make good decisions and come alongside them and not just kind of lay down the law and
Yeah.
try to force them to do things, but out of love say, I am worried about you and you're headed down a wrong path and we need to make some changes. And I am their parent. I'm not afraid of using my parental authority, but I'd rather come alongside them and woo them to good decisions than just try to force it. And a lot of parents are unaware, as you know.
Yeah.
It happens after the train wreck instead of being more involved and aware of what their children are involved in and doing.
And many kids know the reset button, right?
Mm,
Maybe it's time to press the reset button
yeah,
and start again. It seems that sleep got out of hand, and maybe reflecting back on how maybe you got there. Saying, I care about you, love you, I would die for you, and I am
yeah,
concerned about you. I love those words because it's important for them to hear that. This isn't about control. This is about a concern for your health, for your safety, and I want to step in. I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here
yeah,
to raise you, to love you, to guide you. And if you want to be upset at me during that time, that's fine.
right.
I want you to be healthy.
If you could just say like one or two last things to just encourage parents that are listening right now that are maybe really overwhelmed, like maybe they just see anxiety strongly in one or more of their children and they just don't know what to do, how to deal with it themselves. Maybe they're being triggered themselves. Maybe they've got anxiousness too as a parent. What's some words of encouragement that you can give that parent?
I would say you never have to go through it alone,
Mm.
that there are people to help you and alongside of you and encourage you. The other thing I would say is parenting is hard. Parenthood is the scariest hood you'll ever go through. I often joke. Um, but what's the but? The but is, sometimes we define good parenting as the outcome. Do I have kids that don't struggle, that get good grades, that are walking with the Lord? But the outcome really is between our children and the Lord. God just calls me to faithfulness to the task, not
Yeah.
success, at
Yeah.
least not as the world defines success. And so when God gives me a child who's struggling, then that is all it's all about praying and saying, Lord, give me wisdom to love well.
Yeah, that's good.
Because yeah, I'm just called to faithfully love them to the best of my ability.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that faithfulness, that's a key word. As we're parenting, it's not about trying to be perfect or to do everything just right. It's that relational place where you're faithfully stepping towards things that are in front of you every single day. And if my child can feel just an ounce of what it's like to have a Heavenly Father in their life, I've done it well, where I show that comfort, that presence, I'm here, but then pointing them to Jesus consistently in every circumstance and saying, hey, you know what, let's just stop and pray about this together. And that's something that you have said would be good for us to do with our kids. Thank you so much for being with us, Julie. This is
Yes.
an important topic that we'll continue to talk about on the show.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Julie, so much for your time.
Yeah,
We really
my
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Danny, I like to write notes because I love to learn from these guests that we have and these conversations because,
Yes.
man,
I see you writing notes, Rebecca.
Well, they've got
Yeah.
good stuff.
That's a
and
good thing you have a pen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a pen is helpful. But one of the things that I wrote down that Julie said that ministered to me was the ministry of presence.
Yes.
with our children. And I think sometimes we think it's about saying the right thing or like, having this exact perfect response, but just our presence with them. And
That's
I'm
powerful.
with you, child. Like you're not alone in this. How beautiful and powerful that is. And that really ministered to me.
Is it an attentive presence? Is it a presence where you're truly there?
Yeah.
That's that ministry. And when you picture that, man, wow, that is comfort.
The other thing that she said, in just speaking to our children about their faith life and encouraging that, she said to one of her children at one point, God can go to places in your heart that I can't go. And I just thought, wow, how lovely to kind of give young children, especially this picture of like, there's these rooms in your heart that only God can, like spaces in your heart that only He can fill.
Yes.
And it's the importance of encouraging that faith life in our children as a place of comfort and a place where they don't have to be anxious. They can really have that peace that passes all understanding.
I'm glad you've emphasized that, Rebecca. That's important for us to admit that and to know that we want to encourage our kids to open up those spaces and to know God can penetrate deep in there. Let Him do that.
Yep.
There's so many lets in the Bible. That would be one of them. Julie talked about rhythms, and we've been talking about that. I think that's something in the Christian community that we talk about, the rhythms of life, and that we have say in that. And she talked about the importance of these rhythms calming down anxiety, and especially the one where there are experiences that have created an anxious response. And she did distinguish, and importantly distinguished, how we can tell if our child needs to see a therapist, if we need to seek out this extra help for our child and as a family. And that is, how often is the anxiety happening, how intense, and then the duration, and then is it impeding or impacting their ability to function as a human being. And I know that some parents and some kids feel shame when they go, oh man, we're going to go see a counselor. Normalize that piece, that this is a healthcare professional, just like if you need to go see the dentist or you need to go see the doctor for something that's going on. This is one that just helps you think about your thinking and what is happening in there, and realigning and resetting the way that you're perceiving the world. And that's what you would be stepping towards in this, and possibly considering supplementation or medication if necessary, but not being afraid to get the help your child needs. And as you travel that journey, make sure you're engaged in the counseling yourself. You're not just dropping your child off, but asking questions and asking how you can be of help as your child gets through this season of anxiety.
Really, really important topic. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation with Julie today. And I just know that some of our listeners, Danny, have broken free and overcome anxiety in their own lives as well as their children's lives. And if you're listening and you have a success story, we would love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail or an email in our show notes and tell us about your victories. We'd love to hear it. Yes. And if it's something that you're still working on, Focus on the Family is here to help. We have so many resources that we can share. If you'd like to get a copy of Julie's parenting resource on anxiety, it's called Helping Your Anxious Child. We'll put that in the show notes for you, and we'll send that to you also for a gift of any amount. We also have adult resources on the topic of anxiety as well that we will include.
But if you're at a place where you need help right now, please give us a call at 1-800-A-FAMILY. That's 1-800-232-6459. I served on that team as a counselor, and we'll spend the time with you that is needed to talk about your specific and unique situation and what the next steps could be, including possibly a referral to a Christian counselor in your area. And just know that when you call, we'll make arrangements for a phone call back to you at a convenient time for you to talk to one of the counselors. Again, the number is 1-800, the letter A, and the word family.
I'm so thankful for the Q&A portion of our show, because
we'd
love to come alongside you as a listener and give you suggestions and biblical solutions as you navigate your parenting journey. This week's question comes from Kyle, who asks,
Hi, about a year ago, I messed up in my marriage and had an affair. By the grace of God, my wife has forgiven me, and we've gone to counseling. My kids are old enough to understand what happened, and I can tell that they don't trust or respect me anymore. And I've asked them for their forgiveness, but they've seen the hurt that I put their mom through, and I don't think they've gotten to a place of forgiveness yet. So I feel like a failure. But as their father, I do want to be respected as the head of the household. What can I do other than love their mom to regain their respect?
Well, Kyle, thank you for your question. This is a big one. This is a tough one. You're in the middle of it, and I'm really thankful that you've gone to counseling together as a couple, that you're repairing the relationship, the marriage. It takes time, and there are three key words that I want you to be thinking about. One is have patience with this process. It takes a lot of time to heal and repair something like this in a home. And then be consistent. Be a consistent person. Because right now, trust went out the window from your kids, and they see you as a person that has hurt mom. And now they're trying to grasp at trust in one way or another, and that's your consistency. Have you looked for mentors? This is it's an important piece to this process where you look for 2, 3, 4 men that can speak into your life on a consistent basis. And your kids will see that as you're consistent with that. It's showing your vulnerability, your humility to be teachable and to not want to ever do this again. And then one thing that you could do is tell your wife every day as you're leaving the house, I'm going to be faithful to you today. And show that day-to-day process, and start today as you've heard this show, listen to this show, and anyone that has done this, go day by day and be consistent with that phrase, showing it's on my mind today. It's on my mind today. And just do that from here forward, because then you're showing a pursuit, a renewed pursuit of your wife, a renewed pursuit of repair and reconciliation in your home. And you're showing that no matter what, I'm doing this. I'm not doing this to impress anyone or to regain love. I'm doing this out of a love for and a commitment to my wife and to the marriage that I have a covenant with. God repairs anything, and we know He's the God of slim chances, little chances, of cracked pots. And He renews and restores things to even more beautiful places if you allow them to. The key words you used here are hurt and forgiveness, and that you feel like a failure. Those are big words. Forgiveness is something that is an act in a moment, but trust over time takes so long to build. And when there's hurt, it's as if you've cut open the skin, and if you think of surgery, it takes so long for that scar to go away, and sometimes there's nerve pain and other things that take shape in there. It's the same thing emotionally and relationally, and you're allowing for that healing to take place over time. As you come to your wife and your kids, you can say, hey, it makes sense that you guys are upset, that you're having a hard time trusting me, that you're having a hard time loving me during this time. What do you need from me as we continue to move forward as a family? Love on your kids, have one-on-one time. Sometimes kids will share in that one-on-one time. They may ask questions that they may be wrestling with. Tell them, hey, ask me any question, and I'm willing to answer the best I can the questions that you have. And the regaining of respect is something that is going to be up to your kids. You can't demand it in this, and it's seen in the patterns of your life. One thing I'll tell you, Kyle, if you haven't considered this, we have what's called Hope Restored here at Focus on the Family, where you can go away for an intensive as a couple and get 32 hours of counseling with 2 counselors, 5 couples. We have several different places you can go to in Missouri, Michigan, Arizona, Texas, Georgia. And man, beautiful success there. 8 out of 10 of the marriages that have been at a point of complete dissolution have come back together and continued together years down the road. And you're still in a place where it's it's soon enough where an intensive like this could be an amazing gift to your spouse, to your marriage, to the covenant, and to your family. And if your kids see you taking this step forward, I think it'll give them even more reassurance that you're really serious about this. And at the very least, consider a marriage getaway with your wife where you can get away from it all, get away from the stress, and continue to reset the marriage and create those consistent things like the I'm going to be faithful to you today type of things that you can instill into your marriage in the years ahead.
Such wise advice, Danny. Thank you so much. And Kyle, thank you so much for your bravery and sharing your question with us. Thank you for trusting us in that way. We are going to send you Danny's book, 7 Traits of Effective Parenting, as our way of saying thank you. And no matter what is going on, we'd like to take your questions as well. Danny's counsel is always so loving and edifying, as you just heard, and so gracious, and we just want you to know we're here to help. All you have to do is click the show notes and leave us a voicemail or an email.
Well, we appreciate your participation in our podcast. We love having you here around the table with us. You make the work of producing this podcast each and every week worth it completely. Don't you think, Rebecca?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And next week, we'll be hearing from Greta Eskridge about how to talk to your children about the dangers of pornography, a very, very important episode. It's going to be a great show.
Yes, it will. Absolutely. Again, send the link to a friend or family member. It's an easy way to show someone that you're thinking of them. So until we meet again, I'm Dr. Danny Huerta.
And I'm Rebecca St. James. Join us next time for more tips for transforming your parenting on Practice Makes Parent.